Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Wallenstein, which is a board game designed by Dirk Henn and published by Queen Games. This one accommodates 3 to 5 players and takes 90 to 120 minutes to play. So Wallenstein has actually been probably at the top of my want list for a long time, but it's been out of print and recently a Kickstarter has been fulfilled so that more players have access to it. But before I get into my thoughts on Wallenstein, I just want to give a shout out to kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer in the UK. So back to Wallenstein. So Wallenstein is a strange type of game. So it's kind of a hybrid of a Euro and war game, and it has some kind of, the mechanisms are basically combat, and you've got some programming and lots of different things going on, but I think the best way would just be to show you how it's played. So I've kind of randomly set up the board here. It's going to look a bit like this, but I've done this without much rhyme or reason. So you've got all the different cubes on the different regions here on this big map of Germany. And this map is divided into different regions. So you've got the different coloured regions, and within those regions you've got the actual different, different cities. You've got all the different colours here, again, all representing a different colour. And you see I've got a 5-player game here, but if there was, say, a 3-player game, some of these regions are closed off, with these white borders. So the fewer players there are, the map does get a little bit tighter. So some of the other features of the board here are, of course, the score track, which goes around the outside. You've got these bonus tiles here, which will affect player order and give you a bonus depending on which one of those you claim. You've got the wheat track here, which is important because you need to feed the different counties you have, because again, you need to actually feed your kind of war effort. You've got the little track here, which I'll explain a bit later. And towards the bottom of the board, you've got this card row, which all relates to the different actions you can take throughout the game. And from round to round, these are going to be randomized, and that's going to determine the order in which these actions are resolved in. There's also going to be some events. So basically the game is divided into 2 halves, and each of those halves is divided into 4 rounds, like seasons. So you've got 3 basic rounds, then you've got a winter phase, which is basically your scoring and when you have to feed your different counties, and that's what these cards correspond to. So for each round, you're going to have either a bonus, or at the end, you're going to have to, or when it comes to winter, you're going to potentially take a hit when it comes to losing wheat. So you've got some kind of potential to lose even more wheat than you might anticipate. Each player setup is going to look like this, where you've got your own player board here. You're going to have a bunch of cards, and all of those cards are going to correspond to the different regions that you control. So as you can see here, I am the yellow player, so therefore I have all the different regions, all the cards relating to the regions where I've got yellow cubes. So that's what I've got here. You've also got some individual player cards here, and each player's got an identical set of those, and they can let you kind of manipulate turn order and things. You've got all the other resources, or the common resources. You've got money, you've got the 3 different types of buildings. So you've got these palaces, you've got these churches, and you've also got these kind of little townhouses, which I'm not sure the correct terminology. You've got revolt markers, which can play quite a significant factor in the game. And I suppose more important than all, you've got the cube tower here, which I've just knocked a cube out of, which is going to be how combat is going to be resolved in the game, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So as you probably imagined, because this game's got a score track here, the winning objective is to get as many points as you can when it comes to the end of that second year. And you're going to get points when it comes to the winter, which is the 4th round of each year. You're going to get points for each of the different regions you control. So controlling regions is great because it's going to get you points. You're also going to get points for each building you control, no matter what they are. But also for each type of building is going to give you a number of points depending on if you have the majority in each of those regions. So if you have the most palaces in a region, you're going to get 3 points. Churches, you're going to get 2 points. And these ones here, you're only going to get 1 point. But so how does the game actually work? So as I mentioned earlier, this one does have quite a strong element of programming. So on your player board here, you've got 10 different actions you can take, and they again correlate to the different card row here. So this is going to be randomized, and that is going to be, or let you do lots of different things, such as being able to build the different buildings, and the value of those is going to depend on the the strength of those buildings. So the palace is going to cost you 3 money, and these ones are only going to cost you 1. You can harvest wheat, which is of course going to be an important factor when it comes to the end of the year to feed your different counties and to potentially stop revolts happening and potentially stop the peasants kind of overthrowing you. You've got to tax the different regions. And that's going to be how you're going to keep getting income. You've got to kind of bolster your forces. You can spend 3 to add 5 cubes or 2 to add 3 cubes. You can move cubes around from region to region by spending 1 cube. So if, say, I wanted to move these 2 cubes here into this one, I could do that by taking that action. I'm always being sure to leave at least 1 cube behind, because you can't just leave a territory unoccupied. And then you've got the A and B here, which is basically your combat actions. So if I was to take one of those actions, then I would go into an adjacent region and attack that region. But the way you resolve these actions is by simultaneously programming them. So out of all your different region cards, you're going to allocate them to these different spots. So for example, I could say, maybe in this region here, which I'm not going to really attempt to pronounce, I might say I might want to build a palace there. So I'm going to put that face down on that here, which means that, I'm planning on building a palace there, and therefore building that, once it gets resolved, I'll put this, in that region. As you can see here, that these regions have a number of different cities in them. And that depends. So some of them just have 1, but some of them have potential to have more. And that is the capacity to the amount of buildings that particular region can hold. But yeah, you're going to do that for all the different things here. You don't have to take that particular action. That's what these kind of cards are used for, because you can see they have the same backs, and you can use that as a kind of a bluff. So if I was to put that here like this, so my opponents can't just look over at my board and say, look, I'm not taking a bolster action. They're not going to know if that's a dud or not. I've also got this additional spot here, which is why the coin value is important, because let's say I bid 2 on this region here. I'm going to put it face down. That is going to be basically your bid for turn order, and depending on who's bid the most, are going to get priority in choosing where they want to go in the turn order. So you can go, you can choose to go first when the action is resolved, or you can choose to go last. But as you can see here, you've got the variable order, or the bonuses that are assigned to that particular turn order, which will let you do different things, such as when you attack, you might get an extra attack cube, or when you harvest crops, you might get an extra crop, or when you defend, you get an extra cube, or when you tax, you get an extra coin, or when you add those 5 cubes to the board to bolster, you can get 6 instead of the 5. So yeah, these are really useful tools, and that can really be a conflicting decision, because you might want to go first, but you might want a particular bonus. So once everybody's happy with how they've programmed their board, you're going to reveal all those cards simultaneously like so, and then you're going to start resolving them based on the order of that particular card row at the bottom of the main board there. So I'll just continue flipping these over, and then we'll show what all the actions do, and some of the different kind of details on how they actually work. Okay, so as you can see here, 5 of these cards are face up, and 5 of them are face down. So you've got a pretty good order and a good idea of what's going to happen during the first half of the resolvement, but the second half is a bit more muddy, and you don't quite know the order that they're going to be resolved in, which can be a big factor, because you might say want to boost a particular region because you might fear that it's going to get attacked. But of course, if all the attacks come before the kind of muster action, then that's not going to be much help at all. So the turn order and the way things are resolved is a big factor on the decision space and how this game actually works. But let's show you how these work anyway. So as you can see here, the first thing here is going to be to harvest the grain. And as you can see here on my player board, the harvest grain action, I've used in Lundberg. So Lundberg, basically the card shows a number of different details. It shows how much coins you're going to get when you tax that region, how much food you're going to get when you're going to harvest crops, and also how many towns are in that region to build buildings in the first place. And there's a really useful little key at the bottom of the board here to show what all the different regions do, and because of course you're not going to have all the cards in your hand and other players might control them. But let's show you how this harvest action works. So I'm going to have a look here. So Arnholt, I'm going to get Lundberg, I'm going to get 5 crops for doing that. So I'm going to move up my crop marker up to the 5 region to show I've got that. And this can be done simultaneously because this one doesn't particularly matter on the player order. However, whenever you tax or harvest crops, you are going to place a revolt marker. This was in Lundberg, in that particular region like so. And that's kind of like shows the exhaustion of the particular peasants. And the more you do that, potentially the peasants are going to start fighting against you by adding green cubes to the cube tower, and they will kind of pair off and potentially kill each other, which we'll talk about a bit later because combat is quite a big factor in this game. So you've got to be very careful not to keep exhausting the same region again and again, even though that region might be particularly good at taxing or taking crops from. So once that's done, you're going to go on to the next one, which is the boost by spend 2 to get 3 cubes in there. Again, I'd have a look at my player board here. So spend 2 to get 3 is in this region here. So of course I'd spend the money back to the supply, and then I would add 3 cubes of my colour to that particular region, like so, which I can use to, again, just either scare people or venture into new regions, because as you can see here, some of the regions aren't actually controlled by any player, and when you fight into them, you only have to fight a neutral green cube, which is quite an easy thing to claim. But of course, more regions means more points. The attack action is one of the main ones. So as you can see here, my attack A is in this region here, Kurzeschissen, I don't know how to pronounce it. And when I do that, I'm going to have a look at that particular region and see how many cubes I have there. And then I can commit any of them to go and attack an adjacent region. So let's just say I want to move these 2 yellow cubes into this region here because I want to claim it as my own. I'm going to take those and then I'm going to add them to the cube tower like so. And that is going to show a battle outcome. So these are going to start pairing off with each other. So I believe it was the blue cube I attacked there. So these are going to actually pair off and they're going to kill each other. They go back to the common supply, and I've only got 1 remaining. But that means I am now controlling this region, and I can take that card to give me more dominance of the board. But as you can tell there, a lot of the time the cubes get stuck in the cube tower, meaning that the effect and outcome of future battles can be affected by that. So you've got to be very careful about kind of keeping a tally on what's in that tower and what can potentially come out and haunt you later. Because even though there's quite a strong luck factor here on how it's going to get resolved, if you keep getting bad luck, then eventually your cubes are going to come out and start smashing your opponent. So it will generally balance out, and that's generally a good thing in my opinion anyway. So some of the other regions are, again, very simple how they're going to get resolved. They're boosting up. Again, in this region I'm going to build a church, but I've not built a church here because I've just taken that kind of dud action as a bit of a bluff. And then these are going to start getting resolved, and bearing in mind that I didn't know the order which these were going to come out in. So these are very simple. You can just spend a single coin like I've done here in this Hessen Kessel. I'll just spend a coin and add one of my townhouses here to one of these cities, which is going to be great for getting points at the end of the round. I should have said as well at the beginning of the that particular round, you're going to have a look at the event, because out of the 4 that I draw randomly at the start of the round, they're going to get jumbled up, and one's going to affect this particular round. For example, this one I'm going to get capped at only being able to tax 5 coins in this particular round. So if you're a bit short on money, this one can catch you off guard. But these do lots of cool things, such as when you I think it's when you defend and you have a palace, you get an extra cube to chuck in the tower, which is obviously good and going to help you win fights. This one here basically protects you from being attacked if you have a church in a particular region. That one's the same. You've got ones here that's let you kind of remove revolt tiles if you place these houses. So again, you can really kind of calm the peasants and stop them revolting against you and trying to overthrow you. They do lots of different things. And as you can see here, when it comes to winter, the bottom half of the card is it ranges massively. So this one actually doesn't affect you at all, but this one can lose you a massive 7 crops, which can be huge and pretty crippling if you don't have enough wheat to deal with that. And that's going to tie into this winter phase here. So let's just talk roughly through the way the scoring works. So as I said, you're going to get a point for each region you control, which is basically each card you have, a point for each building you control, and then a point if you've got the majority of each type of points depending on the building types if you've got the majorities on them. So 3, 2, or 1, depending on that strength of those buildings. But you're also going to have to pay a number of crops for each card here. So let's just say I had 7 cards in hand and I only had 5 crops. So I'm going to be 2 short. So I'm going to have a look at this track here. So I'm going to be 2 cards short, which means, 2 food short, which means that an opponent gets to pick a card randomly from my hand, and that is going to get revolted by the neutral green cubes at a strength 2. I think it's plus every revolt token in that region. So again, the more you don't feed your people, the more chance it's going to come back and haunt you and potentially lose you regions and lose you points and create opportunities for the other players. So yeah, all you do is do that twice, 2 whole years, and whoever's got the most victory points at the end is going to be the winner. So let's talk about some of the mechanisms and decisions you have to make in Wallenstein. So first off, programming is generally something I enjoy if done correctly, and I might say quite confidently this is probably one of the best examples of programming that I've seen. There's a lot going on here, however it is quite simple on the way it works, and I love the way it functionally works by just allocating the particular regions to those particular actions. But the fallout of that decision is pretty huge because you have to kind of guess and second guess what your opponents are going to do. Do you have to invest in bolstering a certain region before somebody else comes in and attacks it, because you might just have that nagging tension that, this is easy pickings for somebody else to take from me. Maybe you've already invested in palaces and churches there to get them more points as well. So it is a real kind of balancing act of defending regions, but also attacking regions as well to claim those buildings and regions in the first place. But maybe you don't want to go and take on too many regions, and you just want a more steady, manageable empire, because you need to feed them, and feeding them is a massive nagging tension throughout the game, but I think it works really well. I think maybe some of these cards are a bit too punishing, particularly if you've got the 6s or 7s coming out at the end that are going to lose you that many crops before you even get started, and that can be quite significant. But maybe you have an idea of what's coming up throughout the year, and gives you an idea to prepare for that. So by harvesting food from those particular industrious regions, which are going to be more profitable for doing so. But yeah, it all ties into the programming and the order in the first place, which is going to be resolved in, and the fact that the second half of the round is all blurred anyway, so you don't really know the order they're going to get resolved in. Sometimes you just have to take a bit of speculation and say, let's hope I can attack this region before they add more troops there to defend it, which is going to probably make me lose the battle, because once you commit to something and you can complete that action, you have to do it. So it adds that much more weight to the decision, and everything you do is important. So I love that constant tension of keeping hold of what you've got, but venturing into new land as well, making sure you have enough food, trying to keep those peasant revolts down, trying to utilize the current event, because again you can use that to your advantage if a particular scenario works in your favor. Bearing in mind that the turn order is important as well, and also the bonuses for that turn order, because if you're doing really well defensively this round by having this bonus, then maybe you don't have to worry so much about boosting. But yeah, absolutely so well done, and the wrinkles and the fallout of these decisions is pretty huge. And the timing essence of that is just really strong, and a real kind of crunchy, but not overly paralysing decision to make. Just that real cool, satisfying tension. I suppose one of the gimmicks, I suppose you can call it that, but actually I'd hesitate to call it a gimmick because it is such a cool mechanism, is the way the combat works. So of course, if this region wants to go and attack this region here, you're going to have to leave 1 cube behind, and then you're going to add all these to the cube tower and see how that battle goes. And that can create some real cool random moments. Sometimes you're going to have big crunching defeats where you didn't anticipate it, and sometimes even if you're well prepared for a fight, it can go against you simply because of that element of luck and randomness. But it's mitigated luck and it's balanced luck, so it's not going to be unpredictable, at least to a point. You've got a good idea of what's going on in that cube tower and how that's going to get resolved, and it's just a simple resolvement by just pairing them off and then putting the remaining cubes in that particular region, and to assert dominance and who's going to get that card. But it all works so well, so smoothly, and I think it's probably one of my favourite combat systems that is still pretty random in how it works. But yeah, I've got no issues at all. It just fits the game really well, and it actually adds to the experience and kind of excitement to the game. So I really like that system. So yeah, in terms of decisions and mechanisms, I think this game is fantastic. So much to enjoy. Balance-wise, despite this again semi-random combat system, I always 100% feel like the best player is going to win this game. Whoever plans the most, who schemes and plans and plots most efficiently is going to do better than the other players. No question about that at all. So there's no point at all, there's no point in the game where I think, there's a big luck swing in someone's favour and that's going to decide who's going to win or lose the game. No, the player who's played consistently well from start to finish is going to win. Time investment, the game does take 90 to 120 minutes, more likely that 120 minutes to play. Particularly if you want to play it, 4 or 5 players, which I think is probably where this game shines strongest. But I don't find myself bored at any time. You're always trying to stay on top of the board state, trying to stay invested, and trying to make sure that you're not going to let anything slip past you, because it does leave you feeling quite paranoid at times. So it's not a game you're going to get bored or lose interest, despite it going quite, a bit longer than I'd normally like a game to go. So I've got no issues at all there, and it certainly feels like the game length is appropriate for the actual game type. The uptime as well is pretty fantastic because you are programming all at the same time. There is a little bit of scope for AP, but that just adds to the satisfaction of the decision and kind of makes you mull over your mistakes and things. And that's the kind of the talking point of the game. I did this when I should have done that. So I've got no real issue with the kind of uptime or downtime, whatever way you want to look at it either. I always feel engaged, and sometimes players might take longer than others and mull over the decisions. But again, it's because the decisions are meaningful. So yeah, happy with that. Interaction, fantastic. This is, as I said, a borderline war game. So of course, other players' actions and board state is going to completely depend and be a pivotal part of the game on how the other players are doing and what they're doing, anticipating what they're going to do. Are they going to attack you? Is it now the time to attack them before they do so? So yeah, everything is based on player interaction here, and it's a pivotal part of the game. Aesthetically and production, I think the board looks okay at best. Normally I like these dry looking boards. This one, I would like to have seen a bit more kind of texture to it. It does feel a bit flat, like it's made in some kind of generic free map maker kind of software. I'm not massively enthused by the way the actual map looks, but the design of the map is great because it's kind of doesn't leave that much opportunity for turtling and stuff like that. But yeah, the actual visuals aren't the best. Some of the symbology in that on the cards are fantastic. I've got no issue at all with the kind of functionality of the game. The player boards are pretty great, to be honest. And considering how much information is stored on these player boards, I think they've done a good job. I suppose the only issue of the game is that it is a massive table hog. It takes a lot of room because these player boards are so huge and there's a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, this is certainly a sprawling game. The actual physical components are all good. No issues at all. Perhaps some of these tokens are a bit basic and a bit small, but I suppose in this particular version I'm getting the upgraded components, the little acrylic tiles from Queen, but they just haven't come yet. But the basic stuff is fine, it works perfectly fine, and there's no real issue in terms of the production. So, final thoughts on Wallenstein. So, I have to say, I really enjoy this game. It's such a change of pace for the kind of games I normally play, but still feels somewhat familiar because, some of my favourite games, like El Grande, have a lot of shared DNA here. It's an area majority style game where you're getting points for controlling regions, map dominance, that kind of thing. But that kind of spliced with the wargaminess, it just makes this feel different. And I will say, normally these kind of more confrontational war games where you're smashing into each other, claiming regions, defeating opponents, they don't normally, it's not normally my cup of tea. However, I think some of the additional mechanisms here, like feeding your people, such as the card resolution, the actual programming itself, and of course the fun combat, all does take that kind of hard edge off what you'd expect from a war game, and it just makes it fun. The fun factor is really strong on this one. You're always kind of invested. It's not the game I kind of get to the table really regularly because I think it's not going to be for everybody. A big part of that is probably the way this game looks. It's not going to be visually appealing to a lot of people, but that gameplay is fun despite it being, I suppose, pretty stuffy in its approach. That fun is really there, and I think a lot of people could enjoy and get a lot out of this game. Very happy with this one. This is a strong recommendation for me and was certainly worth the wait over that many years because this was out of print, as I said. Alternatively, if you're not too keen on the whole Wallenstein German theme, there is the exact same game out there called Shogun, which is simply a kind of Asian theme, and the map's slightly different. So maybe if you like that Asian theme more, go for that one instead. But this one is going to get my shield of quality, no question. It's going to stay in my collection, a real unique spot in my my collection. And if you want to play that, a more really interactive, confrontational game for 3 to 5 players, then this one is going to be a strong candidate for that. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.